There are an infinite amount of reasons a game could fail. It could be a bad game, it could have launched unfinished, who knows. But there is one game, depending on who you ask, it was either a misunderstood gem or one of the biggest victims of terrible timing in gaming history. Battleborn. A niche game that never found its place in the gaming ecosystem, and a game that most people forgot about or never even heard of. This is the story of Battleborn, the forgotten MOBA? The mid-2010s was a period of immense experimentation within the video gaming industry, with a lot of developers blending genres with a multiplayer experience. At the forefront of this movement was Battleborn, leveraging Gearbox Software's extensive pedigree following the massive critical and commercial success of the Borderlands series. Gearbox envisioned a game that operated within a hero shooter framework, designed to accommodate a wide variety of player preferences. Battleborn seamlessly integrated a narrative-driven, cooperative campaign alongside highly competitive team-based multiplayer modes. The game's idea was to merge the tactical progression and lane-pushing architecture of multiplayer online battle arenas, MOBAs, with the fast-paced action of first-person shooters. Similar to Smite. The financial impact of the Borderlands franchise on its parent publisher Take-Two Interactive provided Gearbox with immense leverage. The original 2009 title was a commercial triumph, shipping over 6 million units. However, it was the 2012 release of Borderlands 2 that fundamentally altered the studio's trajectory. Developed with a budget of $30 to $35 million, the sequel eventually shipped over 26 million units, becoming 2K Games' most successful release at the time. By the mid-2010s, Borderlands had become a foundational pillar of Take-Two Interactive's portfolio, alongside industry monoliths like Grand Theft Auto and NBA 2K. By creating a franchise that reached $1 billion in retail sales faster than any entertainment release in history, Gearbox had established itself as a major developer capable of sustaining a massive, highly engaged player base. This financial success afforded the studio the creative freedom and budget to pursue Battleborn. When Battleborn was officially unveiled, Gearbox unleashed a massive marketing push designed to establish the game as the next evolution of multiplayer gaming. Recognizing that the industry was trending toward highly varied, character-driven competitive games, the primary reason players and journalists were excited about Battleborn was its novel mechanical premise. In 2014, the MOBA genre, dominated by League of Legends and Dota 2, was experiencing explosive growth. However, MOBAs were notoriously complex, featuring steep learning curves and traditional top-down click-to-move PC interfaces. Battleborn promised to take the strategic depth, minion waves, and rapid in-match leveling of a MOBA and transplant it directly into the accessible framework of a first-person shooter. During E3 in 2015, the hands-on previews of Battleborn were highly enthusiastic. Journalists noted that the gunplay felt exceptionally tight, and the distinctiveness of the heroes made the game feel highly innovative. Reviewers praised the competitive PvP modes, which effectively captured the strategic pacing of a MOBA. However, while everyone who tried the game out at E3 knew it was more of a MOBA than anything else, the general populace weren't aware. Because Gearbox was best known for the frantic shooting and looting of Borderlands, the publisher marketed Battleborn heavily to the traditional FPS crowd, actively downplaying the MOBA elements that were the actual beating heart of the game. Trailers focused on chaotic shooting and edgy, abrasive humor rather than explaining the nuanced strategy of lane pushing, shard collecting, and the in-match leveling system, leading to traditional FPS players who purchase Battleborn finding the high time to kill, the necessity of AI minion management, and the lack of immediate gratification of defeating an enemy tedious and confusing. On the other hand, dedicated mobile players, the demographic most likely to appreciate the game's depth and strategic macro play, were largely ignored by the marketing campaign. Plus, these players were already firmly enriched in established, free-to-play ecosystems like League of Legends and Dota 2, and saw little reasons to pay a $60 entry fee for a genre they were used to playing for free. If you're liking this video so far, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Let's continue. Then came Blizzard with Overwatch. On March 7, 2016, exactly 2 months before Battleborn was scheduled to release, rumors began circulating in the gaming press that Blizzard intended to aggressively schedule the Overwatch open beta directly over Battleborn's launch window. Unlike Battleborn, Overwatch prioritized streamlined accessibility, immediate gratification, and a very polished game. Blizzard deliberately stripped away all elements of in-match leveling, economies, and AI management to focus purely on a hyper-fast player versus player combat. The most prominent design was the implementation of static power levels. An Overwatch character was functionally identical at the first second of the match to the final second. There were no equipable items, no skill trees, no shards, and no loadouts. This simplicity allowed players to immediately understand their role without reading complex tooltips mid-firefight. Instead of adapting through in-match leveling, Overwatch utilized dynamic hero swapping. Unlike Battleborn, where players were locked into their chosen hero for an entire match, Overwatch allowed players to change heroes instantly in the spawn. This created a fluid rock-paper-scissors meta where adapting to the enemy team composition by changing characters was a primary strategic option. Furthermore, Overwatch featured a clean UI system, no minimap, and the combat was way more fast-paced and immediate. Following the release of Overwatch in late May, Battleborn experienced one of the most sudden declines in modern AAA gaming history. By June 2016, the game had shed around 80% of its peak player base. In the face of this catastrophic player decay, Gearbox and 2K made a series of baffling monetization and development decisions that alienated the remaining player base. Less than 2 weeks later, Gearbox deployed an update that implemented a premium currency system into the game called Platinum. Platinum could be acquired with real-world money, with currency bundles ranging from $2 to $50. This currency was required to purchase premium cosmetic skins and specific taunts for the roster. The optics and timing of this decision was disastrous. Players had already paid $60 for the base game, and many had purchased the additional $20 season pass. Whilst at the same time, the dwindling player base was actively begging the developers for critical performance patches, matchmaking fixes, and proper in-game tutorials to retain new players. Instead, the most prominent update to the game was a storefront designed to extract further revenue from a dying game. And this didn't help with the comparisons to Overwatch, because Overwatch had a cool system, loot box. Players earned a loot box every time they leveled up, meaning all cosmetic items in-game could theoretically be earned simply by playing. And that's the trick. Realistically, you're not getting the coolest items from the loot box, but the illusion of it gives players an incentive to continue playing the game and may even frustrate them to the point of actually spending real-world currency to buy in-game currency to get in-game skins. And unlike Overwatch, Battleborn's premium cosmetics were hard-locked behind a paywall. By late 2016, it was clear that the only viable path to salvage Battleborn's player base and recoup development costs was a transition to a free-to-play model. 2K Games had recently executed a highly successful free-to-play transition for their multiplayer shooter Evolve in July, which saw the player base skyrocket from a few hundred to a peak of 25,000 practically overnight. 9 months later, on June 6, 2017, Gearbox finally deployed the highly anticipated free-to-play update. The new client granted players unlimited, unrestricted access to all competitive PvP multiplayer modes and maps, with no time limits or level caps. Players were given access to a rotating weekly roster of 6 free heroes, and had the ability to unlock characters permanently using earned in-game credits. Or you could just purchase with the platinum currency. Obviously, anyone with eyes could literally look at what they did and see that they went for the free-to-play MOBA model that was popularized by League of Legends. So, after all of that, was Battleborn actually a bad game? Well, in my opinion, not really, but it had a lot of issues, and most of its issues stems from how complex the game is. If we use League of Legends as a reference point, the game is always changing and adapting. But if we use Overwatch, on the other hand, yes, it has changes, but the game is so standardized compared to a MOBA. For Battleborn, when you strip away the spectacular commercial failure and look at the actual game itself, you find a game that is creative. Gearbox wasn't just trying to cash in on a trend. They were trying to invent a new game by smashing genres together. But in doing so, they created a product that was almost impossible to explain, play casually, or even sell. What it did well was the unique characters with strong personalities and great art styles. It didn't take itself too seriously, and that's kind of the charm that bled into every character interaction and animation. Then they had a helix system that, instead of giving you a static kit of abilities, whilst you level up in matches, you choose between 2 distinct augments at every tier, which meant you could dynamically alter your build mid-match to counter the enemy team. And more importantly, the co-op campaign. Yes, this game had PvE. Overwatch still doesn't have PvE. And we're on Overwatch 2.5, let's be real, when we were promised PvE in Overwatch 2, hence why we got Overwatch 2, but now we have Overwatch 2.5, which is now Overwatch 1? Yes, this game had PvE. It had a PvE campaign that you could play with other players. It was designed to be replayed with different character combinations, featuring raid-like boss fights, loot drops, and escalating difficulties. And let me reiterate that to you. They had a campaign, and they had 30 characters, and they had a helix system, which you can build your characters in so much different ways. Low-key, the PvE system should have carried this game so far. But the problems were too big. First off, the identity issue. Like I pointed out, it was marketed as a hero shooter or a FPS, but realistically it was a MOBA. So people who tried out the game at the first time were confused. And then, like I said, the problem with MOBAs is that the balancing is near impossible. League of Legends, Dota 2 are great examples of how the games are never the same, and metas can break the game. Unlike hero shooters where it's more standardized, MOBAs are very complex and there's so much changing parts when you change one thing. And then launching. It launched alongside Overwatch. And as we know, Overwatch was massive, kinda still is massive in its genre, and Battleborn just could not compete. But Loki, I think Battleborn is a very underrated or underappreciated game. If Overwatch didn't come and just snuff it out, I think it would have had a pretty decent life cycle. But unfortunately, things happened the way they happened, and we're probably never gonna get a game like Battleborn because it's so unique. And the problem with having such a unique game, not just in genre but in character design and art style, is that developers, or more importantly publishers, don't want to fund that. And it's hard to justify funding it when it was, I guess, a failure the first time. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. See you in the next one.